Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. My name is Ron Wills, and I'm the founder and president of NABOE, which is the National Association of Business Owners and Entrepreneurs. NABOE celebrates entrepreneurship in our community and focuses on the small to mid-sized company. Today we have on NABOE's Big Idea Podcast, we have our local business owner, Jack Upchurch, talking today about his assisted care facility, Edenton, which is located in Frederick, Maryland. Good morning, Jack.
Morning, Ron.
Let's go to the real core of this care for our elderly. As you know, I have taken care of elderly parents. My wife has taken care of several elderly people. What do we do wrong, as caregivers in our taking care of our parents and elderly relatives when it comes to thinking in terms of maybe they'd be better off in a facility rather than in their own home or in our homes?
Well, it's not so much what we do wrong, it's that we do the right things, but we do it too long before we reach out. We're uncomfortable making decisions, taking over and making decisions for a parent, forcing them to do something. So we end up just hanging on too long and not availing ourselves of the resources in the community.
Yeah, and I've shared this with you, and I like to share it with the NABOE community, the business community, as well as those who are in today to watch the Big Idea podcast, is that as I mentioned to you, I'd taken care of my uncle along with my two older brothers and younger sister. He had reached the age of 85 and lived by himself with no family. And, he seemed to be doing okay. At least that's what we wanted to think. We started seeing little problems. We would come over to visit him. We'd have a schedule. I'd go over one week and my sister would go over next week, and we had this regular schedule going on. And we noticed things like food spoilage because the refrigerator door was left open all night. We saw some, every so often you'd see a burned pot on the stove, where he had forgotten about it. And we knew at some point we were going to have to step in, but none of us wanted to do it. And we delayed. And then we get a call from Sibley Hospital, which is a local hospital in Washington, D.C., and that my uncle was taken in. He was in a severe accident. And what happened was he had gotten into his car. He had mistaken the accelerator for the brake or vice versa, but he hit the accelerator. And he ended up not only destroying his car, he destroyed two neighbors' cars. Thank God he didn't hurt anybody. Thank God. I don't know if we could have all lived with ourselves if he would have hurt somebody when he did that. And that was the moment we said, we waited too long. And I'm just wondering, was that just our experience, or is that something that happens often?
It happens all the time. It's usually not quite as dramatic, but it's in some form or fashion it plays out. Every family that comes to us has that same story in some version or another. They have some incidents that are inconvenient. They have the late night phone calls that somebody's lost their keys or they've fallen, or something, is not working, or they smell gas, whatever it is. And you deal with that. And you take turns that you divvy it up if you've got family members, but it always plays out that way. And then you have disagreement among family members when somebody that's doing the care starts saying, this is getting to be too much. Then you've got disagreement sometimes among the family members about what's the right thing to do. And so you're usually playing in this environment where your parent has told the family two things. They've told them, number one, I don't want to be a burden on my family. And then secondly, they've told their favorite child, please don't put me in the nursing home. So these things are playing out in every single family, and including my own. And so it is typical. Your story's typical. It takes an incident or a series of incidents. A lot of times it'll be a call from the hospital like you had. It'll be a call from the fire department, or it'll be, the caregiver that shows up and finds mom on the floor. That's usually what precipitates it. Something that happens that
It
forces everybody to deal with it. It's unavoidable
it
at
is
some point.
is truly, from a family point of view, a very tough situation. The one thing that I've seen with just our family and with my wife taking care of, 4 other elderly people, is that in every case, once they were resituated in an assisted living facility, the individual loved it, but they
Yeah.
hated the idea.
Oh,
But once they got
yeah.
in, they go, I've got friends. And I'll never forget it, because we did this with my mom, and it was time. She was in her mid to upper 80s, and it was time for her to be in assisted living. And I'll never forget it. She didn't want to go, and she didn't know anybody there. And then we came over after. We gave her 2 weeks just to assimilate to the place. And we came over, took her out to lunch, and when we brought her back, she says bye, and she saw her friends over in the gathering room, and it was like, hey, well, thanks a lot. And my wife and I we were feeling kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, look at this. So
Yeah.
it is good news on the other end when people finally do it. And I can only tell you from my experience, and I agree with you. It's best to make sure your loved ones are being taken care of, and that somebody's looking over them. I've heard from friends of mine horror stories that one friend's mom had fallen, and they hadn't talked to her for 3 days, and she could not move. Could you
Oh
imagine
dear.
that? Just could not move.
That's
If she was in a facility, it would have been taken care of within
sure.
minutes of her falling. So this is a big issue, and I'm glad you shared this with us today on the Big Idea podcast, because we have in our group, we have that the baby boomers who have mom and dads that really need this care. So I want to thank you for coming by and joining us today at the Big
Sure.
Idea podcast.
Sure. Thanks.